Well, thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And like Yvonne said, this is my first foray into the corporate world. Our office is really big, my weight management practice, and we've got 7 people here now. We're like, oh, it's massive. Yeah, like Yvonne said, my job really is as a health psychologist. So psychology is kind of changing a little bit. Maybe 20, 30 years ago, it was all about, it was really confined to people who have mental health conditions. But now we're seeing this movement towards positive psychology, where we believe that psychology can really be for everyone, and Yvonne is a good example of that. And my job is really as a health psychologist, so I help people become physically healthier. A lot of what we'll talk about today will not be new to you. You know, just chuck your hand up quickly if you think of, like, you're thinking of creating a new healthier habit, thinking I should do less of this or more of that. Yeah, like most people. And so we're going to go through sleep and exercise and alcohol and just different things that you already know are good. But what I really want to do is give you some ideas on how you... What did I say then? Oh, yeah.
Things you already know.
Thank you, Freud. I'm going to give you some ideas on how you actually get it done. And I suppose if I do my job right, that's my real value too, is in helping you change some little habits. I suppose I'm not naive enough to think that in an hour or an hour and a half I can change your whole life, but I am optimistic enough to believe that I can help you make a meaningful change to it. So why did I call this workshop Sharpening Your Axe? Which way we go here? Oh, firstly, I want to say, yeah, Yvonne found me through the APS, and as a member of the APS, we like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land. We think that's something that's important. Okay, let me tell you a story of the woodcutter. So, there's a strong man, and he thinks, I could be a woodcutter. So he goes to a timber merchant and says, hey, will you employ me? And the timber merchant says, yeah, you're a big strong man, let's do it. And he says, I'm going to show you the part of the forest that I want you to fell. Go to work. Gives him his axe. First day, he chops down 15 trees. The timber merchant says, that's excellent. You come back tomorrow, you're in. Next day, he cuts down 13 trees. It's like, well, that's not too bad. Maybe it was beginner's luck the first time. Day after, 11 trees. He thinks, what's wrong? What's going on here? So I've got to work through lunch, obviously. I've got to work through my morning tea, afternoon tea. Next day, cuts down 9 trees. Eventually, he keeps on cutting down less and less trees, and the timber merchant says, we've got to let you go. You're going to have to hand back your axe. He looks at the axe and says, this axe is blunt. When did you last sharpen your axe? And the woodcutter said, well, I've been too busy chopping down trees to sharpen my axe. So I think you probably get the moral of the story. But I'd like to kind of extend the metaphor further and ask you to consider that no matter what you do, you are the axe. You know, the most important tool, you think about all the emails that you have to answer, all the meetings you have to have, all of the projects you're working on, the most important tool in all of that is you. So I suppose that's something I want to try and get across to you today, is that, you know, we know self-care is really good for us, but every study we do in people in high-performing roles, so when I say psychologists, we like to use weird words for things. We say high-performing roles, that's basically professional people or people who are academically trained and using their brains more than their bodies. All research we do on those guys, where we encourage them to care for themselves more, their productivity stays the same or gets better. So if we look at it on averages over thousands of studies, you're not going to get any less of yourself if you take better care of yourself. I was talking to one of you guys before who said, you know, this is obviously, you know, a hard working environment, and my background is in sports psychology. And with sports psychologists, when we talk about balance, we talk about this idea of balance within imbalance. You know, a lot of you guys are probably not going to be the sort of people that work your 37.5 hours a week and just leave work at home. It's too important to you. So what we want to do is try and create some semblance of balance. So I got a mate who worked with the Australian cricket team, and when they were over not the last Ashes, but the Ashes before that, he said, what I want you to do is, he was going over a week after they'd been into training over there, and he said, all I want you to do is each of you just tell me one thing about England that you've seen or done. He didn't say, go and take 2 days off. So I'd like to kind of introduce you to this idea of balance within imbalance, and trying to think of creating some of these changes just in a way that is right for you. And I think really the smaller, the better. Guys, super happy too for anyone to talk to me. I definitely favour interaction, and I suppose you probably do too. So how do we do that? We do this through just creating habits. How do habits form? Well, first we have the cue. So say, for example, the cue is getting to your beautiful office, and then at some stage you link some kind of behaviour to that. Might be having a cup of coffee. You have the cup of coffee and it feels good. It might be the taste of the coffee, it might be the caffeine, it might be whatever it is. And so over time, this is super basic psychology. Rewards are things that strengthen our behaviour. Over time, we get into this loop so many times that the coffee becomes intrinsically linked in a deep centre in our brain with getting to work. So what if we want to change that habit into something like meditation or whatever it is? How do we do that? It's like, for example, we all kind of know meditation is good for us. Everyone knows that. Who here regularly meditates? Why? The psychologist. So right now we've got one in the room, including me. I did it for about 3 months and then stopped. I had a friend that I saw on the way here. I just flew in today, and saw a friend I haven't seen in years, and caught a cab with her here. And she said, Glenn, I meditate every day. And I'm like, that is really weird. It's great for you, but it's really weird. So I suppose the point is, there's a lot of these things that we know we should do that we're just not really good at doing. And hopefully, if I do my job, I'm going to help you do at least one of them. Okay, so we really have this big gap between what we say we want to do and what we actually do. And psychologists, in their infinite wisdom, call it the intent behaviour gap. Why do we have this gap? Why is there this kind of, sometimes this logical, rational, sensible part of us that goes, oh, this would be a good thing to do, and then this other side of us that kind of goes, nah. Let's try a little activity and we might get a little bit better understanding of it. So what I want you to do is just break into little pairs, and here's what I want you to do. So Yvonne, can you be an example with me? Okay, so we're going to, this is going to be a bit weird. We're going to, we're going to have one person is going to be the observer. So I'll be the observer, and then the other person is going to be the transformer. And so what we're going to do is, and this is a bit weird, I've only met you once, but I'm going to observe you and see what I can notice, and try and pay attention and really store it in the memory banks. Because a lot of the times, I hear you've done some work on mindfulness. You'd know that a lot of the time we're not very mindful. So I'm going to be really mindful, notice everything I can, and then we're going to turn around, both of us. Yep, so we're going to turn around. I'm going to close my eyes if need be. And Yvonne is going to change 3 things about her appearance. You don't have to actually do it. But then we're going to come back. And once you've done it, was you halfway through?
I was halfway through.
Okay, I'm going to see what I can notice. And I'm going to try and be mindful of the changes. All right, so we're ready to go? Right, let's go. I want you to pick your partner. We'll do it. Do you want to do it?
Yeah. You change. And
I'll change.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? You get one of these guys that's floating, and I'll manage this. Hey?
I don't know when she's ready.
Guys, let your partner know when you're ready. No, she's got a partner. Alright guys, when you're done, sit down. Just sit down when you're done. How'd you go? Got 2 out of 3. No, guys, don't switch. Just take a seat when you're done. All right. Okay, so did anyone get anything out of that or want to share just a little bit about their experience in doing that little exercise?
I was very excited that no one did pull his pants down.
Excited or relieved? Oh, that's charming. That's charming. What?
I don't know how I missed something. Like something obvious that I just.
So what did you miss?
You had a button undone.
Yeah. It's amazing how much is in our visual field that we actually don't. It doesn't register. Yeah. Even when you're looking. Yeah.
I was kind of imagining things, so she pulled up one of her sleeves and I was like, oh, there was a watch or something, it was never there.
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? Because your memory is reconstructive.
Yeah.
It does stuff after the fact.
Because she had a watch imprint, so I expected a watch to be there.
Your brain transforms. It's amazing what the brain does, isn't it? Okay, so why are we doing this exercise? Hopefully one of us knows. Okay, I want to just the transformers, the people who changed. I want you to think of those 3 things that you changed, and then I want you to tell me how many of those things you have changed back in the course of that exercise to now. So who has changed 1 thing back? Not the other 2. Now, who has changed 2 things back? Anyone changed 2 of the 3 things back? Who has changed 3 things back? Pretty much everyone. That's my point. The force of habit is so strong, and we can never, I can't emphasize that enough. We are absolutely creatures of habit. If you notice yourself tonight as you get home, if there's anyone at home, how you say hello to them, where you put your keys, that routine, we are absolutely creatures of habit. So it's actually quite hard to change habits. And I want to sort of use this information in a really empowering way in a minute. But it's, you think, why don't I do that? It's actually really, really hard because we are so habitual. And sometimes we do kind of feel like we're in 2 minds. Like I have my clients that say to me, I work a lot in food psychology, and they're like, I've got this, because everyone wants to lose weight these days, this part of me is going, if I eat that, that's going to make me put on weight, it's no good, and at the same time, my other self is going, like a zombie. And you feel like you're in 2 minds, and you often feel like that when you're trying to create new habits. And the good news is that you're not crazy. It's because we actually have 2 parts of your mind that are making the decision at the same time. Psychologists, we love the big words, so we call that dual process dynamics. But you basically got these two systems in your brain at the same time. One of them we call the reflective system. So this is like a logical, rational, conscious, thought-through system. This is the system that we use in psychology sessions. We go, oh, that behaviour is not really working that well for you. Yeah, we should change it to that behaviour. Yeah, fantastic. Or when you make your own plan. And then we have this other system that we, I think of that system like the Spock system. You know, Doug Spock's like, let's just do this. This makes sense. Yes, everything is very well thought out and it makes a whole lot of sense. Then we have this other system that is really fast. It happens without conscious thought. It's an impulsive, emotionally based system, and it often overrides the other system. It's related to our habits. So we're kind of trying to use our willpower to change our habits. I think of this system like the Homer Simpson system. It's just it's not a whole lot of thought, it's just a lot of reaction. The trouble is that things that decrease the use of the Spock system kind of make Spock smaller. When you're not sleeping well, certain substances, if you're not eating enough or drinking enough water, if you're stressed. So it's like these are the times where you most need self-care, but sometimes it can be the times when it's the hardest to do. Whoever created our brains is an interesting character. So we get this decrease in the willpower, but also this increasing of our impulsive system. We make more emotionally based decisions, and we increase our habit strength. So then we get what I call Spocks in my offices. It's like, yeah, Glenn, it's like a typical thing I work with people is exercise. I want to do more exercise. Okay, let's make a plan using our reflective systems. 3 times a week sounds good. And then at the end of their day when they plan to do the exercise, Spock is dead and Homer takes over. And it probably looks a bit like that. So this is kind of what we're working with.
How similar is this to, I'm not sure if you've read that book, Think Fast.
Blink?
Think Fast and Slow. He calls it System 1 and System 2. Is that the same?
System 1, System 2, impulsive, reflective, fast brain, small brain.
It's the same kind of concept.
Same concept, yep.
Is that the same as like the prefrontal lobe?
Prefrontal, yep. Prefrontal cortex versus the rest of the brain, absolutely, yep. And I think all of those things conceptually you can think of in that way. There are tiny little variations that psychologists would argue, but that's the same thing. Big brain, small brain, frontal cortex, primal brain, yep. So how long does it take to form a habit? Does anyone know? Anyone guess? 21 days. That's no, that's not right. That's what everyone thinks. That's what everyone thinks. And again, that this information that it's easy to sorry to shut you down. I'm half sorry because it was pretty funny. This is good. I like working with corporate people. All my clients are so sensitive. You'll be seeing her, Yvonne, for a bit in therapy. That was wrong. Yeah. So it might seem like I'm kind of giving you some pretty negative messages about creating habits because it is a lot longer than 21 days mostly. But I kind of want you to have the right tools. So if you do want to change a habit, that you can actually do it. I work, mainly in health behaviours, and what we find is there's a big range from 18 days, so it could be 21 days, to the better part of a year to create a new habit. It depends on the complexity of the behaviour. It depends on your particular habit strength. So people they vary in their individual habit strength. So you might be a person who it takes a long time to form new habits, but once they're in, they're quite strongly set. Or you might be a person that it's actually a bit easier for you to form new habits, but it's a bit easier to get out of them. So that could be something interesting to kind of reflect on. But really, it's kind of like how long was a piece of string? I suppose the important thing is for you to know when you've created a habit. And the easiest way is you'll be doing it all the time. But your habits happen with what we call automaticity. So it happens when you don't have to think about it. It often happens even when you try for it not to happen. And probably most importantly for us in this context, it happens when you are under stress. So it becomes an automatic reaction under stress. For example, I do a lot of work in self-defense and martial arts training, like jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts and things, and we train our fighters into certain habits. When someone punches, you go like this. And we don't consider it a habit unless they've got a big, strong person punching them and they're really scared and they go like this. It's the same thing with these habits. If you want to meditate for 5 minutes at lunchtime, it's not a habit until you're stressed out of your brain, you've got loads of work and you go, oh, I've got to meditate. The meditation one's a good example. So really, I think you stick at it until it becomes your normal habit under stress. So it's kind of like Mark Twain said, we don't want to just chuck all your habits out the window. You know, a lot of people go on kind of like this is it, I'm going to, like my clients come in, because often I see them first session and they have this list of things they're going to do. I'm like, wow, you're going to like create a whole new person. We really want to just kind of coax old habits down the stairs. And that means sometimes, to extend Mark Twain, that sometimes the habits might kind of creep back. Don't feel like that's anything bad. That's actually the way that we change habits. So if you look at, say, for example, people who quit smoking and are successful, they don't just go, oh, you know, I don't smoke anymore. Most of them. They kind of smoke a little bit less and they go back to smoking. And then they smoke a little bit less and then they have a few beers. And then they smoke a little bit less. And then, and then they get stressed. And so it is this sort of seesawing. So if you go backwards with your habits, that's totally fine. Doesn't mean that you're at square one. You kind of feel like you are, but you're actually, that's the process of just gently kind of coaxing your habits down the stairs. So we're going to go through a bunch of good self-care behaviours. And I'm just going to give you really some tips that work really well with my clients. Like Yvonne said, I'm responsible for teaching a lot of the psychologists and dietitians in Australia about changing health behaviours. And I think a real lot of my value is not, I haven't done a PhD, I'm not a researcher, but it's in translating really good research into simple things that work. But what I'd like you to do is to pick one of these things and try and change it over the next little while. What I would love you to do is to use the simplest Glenn Mackintosh note-taking system in the world and write down a few things to do and try to do 3, and then put it somewhere where it's going to really annoy you, and don't let it leave until you've actually created the new habits, and just tick them off kind of one by one.
So does the list say I will do X or do less X?
You know what? I reckon the list, obviously if you're setting a goal, good to be super specific, like, you know, the SMART goals. So it says, you want to be really, really specific. Because remember, we've got that, like, the cue, the behaviour, the reward. You almost want, when this happens, I will do this. Because all of your behaviours happen with cues. You'll find that there are some cues, like being a certain place or a certain emotion or a certain person will cue those behaviours, but very specific. And because it is so hard, I'm going to be recommending various types of support that can help. And obviously with habit changing, that's kind of the domain of the psychologist. So Yvonne found me through the APS, but the APS has a great Find a Psychologist service where you can look up psychologists by what they specialise in, where they are, and Sydney has a huge representation in the APS, so you can find all sorts of psychologists to help with all sorts of habits. All of this stuff, of course, extends to any habits you want to change. Okay, so like I said, my background's in sport and exercise psychology, and And I think movement for me is the number one. I like the word movement over exercise because for a lot of people who haven't had a good relationship with exercise, you know, the language is important. It could signify a new relationship. We all know that exercise is great for our bodies in pretty much every way. But if we look at the mental benefits of regular physical activity, it really does look like it's a magic pill. So there's nothing that a psych can measure that doesn't get better when you exercise. Your attention, your concentration, so your ability to hold attention. And this is why exercise is really good for high-performing people, because a lot of your stuff is cognitive. Your mood, so more of the pleasant moods, which we love, less of the unpleasant moods, but also stabilizes your mood. So if you feel like you're a bit up and down or not too resilient, exercise is awesome. It helps you ruminate less. Higher serotonin makes you ruminate less. So sometimes, you know, sometimes something happens in the day and you feel like it really bugs you all day, and then other times it just bounces off. That's a change in serotonin typically, and that happens with exercise. It's really everything we can measure. Higher order decision making, problem solving, memory, learning, everything. I think the coolest thing is though, we find benefits in just 11 minutes of exercise. So you don't have to go and do a gym session. Like say if you wanted to lose weight, you've got to do at least 40 minutes cardio, all that sort of stuff. If you want to do, you know, build muscle, you've got to do at least this many reps and sets, and it's not like that. You know, we have this kind of Cartesian dualism where we think our brain and our body are separate, but the brain is like, you know, a big part of the machine, and it operates when the rest of the machine is moving. It's designed for the rest of the machine to be moving. So we're going to give you some simple do's and don'ts. This is really simple. Don't do stuff you don't like doing. Human beings are not good at doing stuff they don't like doing. And that might seem super simple, but how often do we create an exercise plan because we want to get fitter or lose weight or get stronger, and we actually end up creating an exercise plan that we don't like? It's super duper common. And it's the biggest, enjoyment is the biggest predictor of exercise adherence. So don't do stuff you don't like.
What does that mean? I mean, all exercises generally end up being painful.
That's why we don't do that. And it really, I'm going to actually show you, because it like that is the idea that we have. And you know, some people kind of, you know, you get people who kind of embrace the pain. Like some people kind of like it, and there's like an enjoyment in the pain. But then you got a lot of people who just experience it's like, no, this is just pain. And so with those guys, coming from an exercise psychology perspective, it is about trying to develop a positive relationship with movement. Because if you think, I think of your relationship with movement like your relationship with a person. You know, if you think of your best mate that you wanted to see, you know, that you say your best mate and said to you, hey, you know what, let's catch up and have a coffee or a beer this weekend, you probably make time. And then if you compare that to your most annoying relative, who every time you see them, it is painful, then it's kind of the first thing to drop off the list. So it's about, and why is your best mate your best mate? Because when you see him, you have positive experiences. So that's what we're really big in our work of helping people have positive experiences with exercise. And once you develop that positive relationship, then you don't need to use willpower anymore. So the habit becomes simple. Tons of ways that you can get support for your physical activity. Friends, family, guys at work, exercise physiologists or PTs. PTs are awesome. If you really want to, you've got to find a good one, of course. But if you want, if you just really want to exercise but you can't make yourself do it, PT's the way to go. So I'm a psychologist who specialises in exercise. So I reckon 8 times out of 10 I can get people to develop this positive relationship. I do hypnosis and all different things, and it really helps. But then those 2 out of 10, we just send them to PTs. So you got to get it done, if you know. And especially I see a lot of high-performing professionals, and the PTs are a go-to for a lot of them because it's like an appointment, you know, and you guys value appointments, and it's a good excuse for your bosses and yourself. You can say, this is, you know, something I have to leave for. Okay, so these are, and if you want this, you know, if you want to, you're interested in this is on my website under the free resources section. It's what we call the 5 E's of movement. It's basically the psychological predictors of exercise adherence. So what keeps you exercising? And it's really simple. It's all psychology. Having fun, Doing things with efficacy. So efficacy is about, another psychologist word, it's about doing things you feel you can do. I was talking to my boxing coach on Monday. He's like, I hate basketball. Another guy at the gym plays basketball. He's like, I hate basketball, stupid sport. I'm like, have you ever played basketball? He goes, yeah, I played once. I sucked. You go, well, that's why he doesn't play basketball, because he sucked at basketball. And so it's about doing things that you feel you're comfortable doing. So we get our guys, if they're not very fit, we go for a walk. They're like, oh, that won't do anything. It's like, yeah, it will. It will help you feel comfortable and confident moving your body. Stuff that you like to do. Stuff that's not embarrassing for a lot of people. You know, if you're you've lost fitness or you're concerned about your body image, exercise can be quite embarrassing. And then solving problems from a place of empathy. So what I mean by that is, if something's a problem, don't just say to yourself, suck it up. I can happily spend in a psychology session, one session, helping someone get over the problem of, I hate the mirrors at the gym. When I walk past them, I feel disgusting. We spend an hour on that. And if we get over it, then we're happy. I don't just say, oh, you need to suck it up, and because that doesn't form the right relationship with exercise. Okay, what about food? First thing to do, don't diet. So when I say diet, I mean focus on eating in order to lose weight or to not gain weight. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that because I have a dieting bandwagon. But really, every diet under the sun...
Just knocked his water over.
He's like, he stuffed my idea of dieting. I was going to lose doesn't he know it's summertime? It's, you know, every diet that you can find out there, they all claim to be different somehow. But if we look at research evidence, they are all the same. So everyone loses weight, gains it back with interest. It's what researchers call the Nike swoosh of weight loss. And then your weight ends up going, like you go, I'll start again, you do it, and you diet yourself fat. It's like goes the way, I say to people, it goes the way you want your shares to go, but not the way you want the scales to go. And there's no diet and exercise program that does any different, even if you add psychology on. If you add psychology on, there's a lot of psychologists who work in my space who say it's the missing piece, but all it does is elongate this. You get more weight loss and then you more slowly regain weight. This sounds really simple, but if you want to learn to eat healthy, learn healthy eating skills. Dieting skills are not healthy eating skills, and I'll show you what healthy eating skills are in a sec. If you want support with this, dietitian's a really, really good person to see. And it's like, you know, a lot of the stuff you'd be doing with a dietitian, people say to me, oh, Glenn, I know that. It's like, well, yeah, but do you do it? You know, that regular, sometimes it is just the accountability. If you do see a dietitian, check out a non-diet dietitian. We call them non-diet or health at every size dietitians, and they basically are dietitians who won't stuff your brain up by putting you on a diet. Or I find for a lot of my busy people, food delivery. Like if you have a problem with food prep and that's just not working, things like Light and Easy, or there's a million of them, and they all have their advantages and disadvantages, but very good for busy people. Probably not the sort of thing you'd want to do forever, but definitely a good thing to set some habits. Okay, so why don't we diet? A lot of people feel like they've failed diets. It's because a lot of people do fail diets. But if we look at the research, about 97% of people who diet to lose weight will regain that weight with interest. And of those people, half of them end up getting worse. So when I see people who say they've failed diets, I sort of feel like it's the other way around. That dieting process, which is really just prescribed under eating, is failing them.
Glenn, can you explain the difference between eating healthy food and being on a diet?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically dieting, and there are all different words for it, but if you are, when you're making eating choices, the primary thing in your brain is, am I going to gain weight or lose weight with this eating choice? Then that's a diet. Doesn't matter how you frame it, a lifestyle choice or a food plan. And that's, you know, I run a whole program, a year-long program called the 12-month transformation, and we spend almost half our time in helping people understand not to diet. And I'll show you the alternative. Because diets, yeah, they result in a whole host of problems. I won't talk you through all the details, but they lower your metabolism and your immune system. You end up getting less muscle mass and bone density, because when you lose weight, you lose a bit of fat and a bit of muscle and a bit of bone. Then when you regain it, you just regain mainly fat. So even if you get back to the same place, your body composition is changing. After the honeymoon period, the weight loss honeymoon period, when all the weight comes back on, you end up with a worse body image, worse self-esteem, because you blame yourself, and it's shown to be linked to depression. You end up becoming less sensitive to your own signals. So your body is an amazing self-regulator. It knows when to start eating. It knows when to stop eating. It knows what foods it likes. But dieting often interrupts that process by telling you when to eat, when not to eat, what not to eat, and all of these rules. It gets you preoccupied with food. So who's ever been on a diet and you just can't stop thinking about those foods you're not allowed to have? Yeah. We call that the forbidden fruit effect. But it's actually your brain is doing, you feel like, oh, am I lacking willpower, or am I soft, or am I, you know, crazy? It's like, no, you're under eating and your brain is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's saying, Glenn's not feeding me enough. I'm going to get him to think about food a lot. And then when he finally eats, because I can't trust him to eat enough, I'm going to get him to eat lots. So we see higher external, emotional, and binge eating. External eating is just eating because the food's there. Emotional eating is, you know, eating because you're feeling bad. And binge eating is like that uncontrolled sort of, you're eating a lot of food in a short space of time. So this is why we don't diet, no matter what the next big diet is. It's amazing because if you mention all this stuff, you fail Diet Marketing 101. But this is what we find when we look at the research on what happens with people who focus on weight when they're eating. And of course, it leads to weight gain and regain. And that's what's normal. That's not for people who stuff it up. That's just what's normal. So if not dieting, then what? If you're interested in improving your eating, I'd encourage you to look at mindful or intuitive eating skills. I do a lot of work on teaching people how to mindfully eat. So if you go to my website, I've got a YouTube series on there, and there's heaps of videos on exactly how you do mindful eating. But really, it starts off with being free to eat all foods. So no foods are banned. A lot of bad things happen when we ban foods. It's about being present when you eat. And really, that's about being not distracted. So like turning off the TV. Sometimes people have like 3 or 4 devices. And if they can turn off one, that's a benefit. So it's not about being perfectionistic. I say to people, being a mindful eater is not like, okay, I'm having my morning sandwich. It's a weird thing to eat in the morning. It's probably because I ate a sandwich this morning on the plane. Thanks again, Freud. It's 2. I'm having my sandwich for lunch, and I'm going to be like, all right, everyone, turn the phones off, turn the lights down, light a candle, It's not that. It's just the more mindful you are, the better. It's on a continuum. You're listening to your hunger and fullness. A lot of people say, I don't really know when I'm hungry and when I'm full. That's not true. You do. If you go to my website, there is a mindful intuitive eating journal. I do this in all of my workshops, and whenever I ask people to rate on a scale where they are, they know exactly. It's just a matter of learning to check in. It takes time to do, but it's just a matter of learning to check in. Being aware of and overcoming the non-hungry cues, because most of our extra eating is not because they're hungry, it's because they're emotional or the food's there or someone's offered. And then having what we call food-body congruence. So all that means is just eating because you want to feel good. So not eating because it's healthy, or not eating because it's going to make you lose weight, but eating because it makes you feel good. So thank goodness more nutritious foods make us feel better, and less nutritious foods, we can kind of tolerate them in small amounts or every now and then. Body is fine with those. But if we eat them in bigger amounts, the body doesn't like them. So it's just about becoming mindful of that. It takes thousands and thousands of pairings. But when you can mindfully notice, this type of food makes me feel better, this type of food doesn't make me feel so good, then what happens is something pretty magical. You start to develop an intrinsic want, a gravitation towards nutritious food. Not because it's right or it's moral or it's going to make you lose weight or it's healthy, but just because you want to eat it. And that's why mindful or intuitive eating works a lot better in terms of developing long-term habits.
Isn't that pretty hard to do? Because I mean, scientists have spent a very long period of time in the food industry creating foods that the body craves.
Oh.
The sugars, the salts, and all those things, it's very easy to confuse something that your body actually wants with something that gives you enjoyment. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And so they've stuffed it up and made my job 10 times harder. The thing to look at there is really how you then free your brain and body of those foods. And the paradox is that you can't not have them, because when we ban them, then we get into a trouble spot. So that makes it become very, very tricky, because absolutely. And so I think probably the hardest part of this to do is to start to be aware of when you're not hungry. And so basically for someone who is, has a brain addiction to those foods, it's about first checking in with, I'm not hungry now, and then, okay, what do I do? What is actually going on? Is it because it's a habit cue? Is it because I'm emotional? And then dealing with that. But you're right, it takes a long time. That's the hard part.
So for people who decide I'm not eating any sugar at all,
yep.
I'm just going to eliminate sugar, this feeds into that and your body will then start to crave it.
Totally. Your brain will start to crave it. Absolutely. People who feel like they're addicted to hyperpalatable foods, fat, salt, sugar, the ones that are made up by the psychologists on the dark side, you can look at a technique called emotional freedom technique, or tapping. It's the most effective therapy that we know of for specific food cravings. You can, this is going to sound like another plug, but you can go to my website and check that out too. I've done with a researcher from Bonn, the first university trial of this technique worldwide with 600 people, and it basically takes away your cravings for specific foods.
Glenn, you've got to tell them what it is now.
It's a combination of tapping on acupressure points. So you're tapping on these acupressure points and exposing yourself to the food. So you're not like you were exposing yourself for. It's exposure to the food. You don't expose your fats. That would be even weird. The technique's weird enough as it is. But it's basically your brain will want those foods if you're addicted to it when you see it. Like, you don't get someone who's addicted to heroin and show them heroin and their brain not go, whoa. So it's the same process. It's the same process. And so what you do is we expose you to the food, and then you tap on these series of acupressure points, and it's shown to calm down that small brain that we were talking about, that addictive loop in the brain in MRI trials. So pretty freaky. But it works with pretty much everyone and is not dependent on placebo. So I'll do it with I'm teaching a bunch of psychologists here. Tomorrow and the next day, we'll do the tapping or the EFT in the last session of the workshop, and half of them will be on board, half of them won't be on board. By the end of the session where we do it with the food, 100% of them will be on board. The ones that were already on board will be going, yeah, I knew that worked, and the other ones will be going, oh my God, I can't believe this is working. And you just don't eat the food again. How are we going for time?
You've got another 45 minutes.
Oh, easy. All right. Any more questions on that? I'm just conscious because I'm really at heart, my main area is food psychology, and I could talk about this all day, so I'm just conscious not to.
How long after you've finished eating do you actually feel like your brain tells you you're actually full?
Yeah, excellent question. So there are two mechanisms. There's a hormonal mechanism, which takes about 20 minutes. And then there's a nervous mechanism that comes from the stretching of your stomach and that signal going up to the brain, which takes about 6 to 8 minutes. So you kind of get two signals. They feel a little bit different, but because that's pretty tricky to get, and also it's pretty tricky to pick up those signals, especially that first one, and also most of us don't eat for much longer than 20 minutes. What I say to people is you can stop when the hunger stops. So you actually just use your hunger as the guide to eat. When I start getting hungry, I start eating. And then when the hunger stops, then I can stop eating. So I don't have to wait to kind of get to that next stage is when the fullness kind of starts. Yeah, because sometimes that can, unless you're eating really slowly, it's hard to pick up.
So how do you stop yourself from doing that? Because I always find that I end up getting, my stomach is exploding, but I'm still hungry. And I can't, but I find it really impossible to stop. I keep going.
And is this any food or yummy food?
No, it's like most foods.
It's like most food. It's food.
Yeah.
You need to, seriously, you need to go through my YouTube videos and watch one that's called It's So Yummy, How Do I Stop? And then there's 2 on mindful eating, because it is a skill and it takes quite a bit of practice. But I think what's going on there is that actually, a couple of things might help you. One, a massive cue for our eating is how much food is there. So you can change that on the plate, and that will help train yourself into, because your brain basically thinks of food in units. And so if you have that, that's a unit. And there's some part of your brain saying, I'm not going to be full until this is all eaten, despite what this is saying. So sometimes you can kind of cheat and change the size of the portion. But the real answer is to practice this over time. And it is, because I present this to people as the alternative to dieting, people then, and we're conditioned by the dieting industry to believe in quick fixes. People think, I'll just do this. But the reality is it takes quite a while. Another thing that you can do, because it sounds like for you it might be a bit about just the pleasure and the taste of eating, is eat very mindfully. It definitely is. So when you think about, say you go on a date with someone and you spend a couple of hours with them, and you're kind of on your phone and you're a bit in your head, and you kind of finish your date, you don't feel like you really got what you needed. It's a similar kind of God, you guys have dirty minds. All right, Glenn's brain, stop. Let's move on to sleep. I just completely forgot what I was saying. Okay, because what you need from, I'm not going back to the date. Let's go to the food. What you need from the food is actually pleasure and enjoyment, and that is in the brain. It's not in the body. So one of the ways you can get that is through more food. Don't cross your arms. The other way you can get it is through paying more attention to the same food. And when you get practiced at it, you end up, the gold standard is you end up enjoying your food more, but actually eating less. Because when you've got half your brain saying, I shouldn't eat this, my stomach's bursting, you don't really enjoying it. Part of you is, but then part of you is not. So I can practice those couple of things. And watch my YouTube videos. Okay, let's check out this dude as asleep. Okay, sleep is, again, it's one of those things, it's just so important. It's like exercise. When you sleep better quality and better time of sleep, then everything kind of gets better. Some of the big don'ts is have a lot of caffeine before bed, so you probably know that. The half-life of caffeine is about 6 hours. So what that means is, say if you have a cup of coffee at 3 in the arvo, by 9 in the evening, half of that caffeine will still be in your system. By 3 o'clock the next morning, a quarter will still be in your system. So you can kind of think of that as a general guideline. About half of it will be in your system 6 hours after you drink it. People are it's a very individual thing, because we know people's bodies, there's a great variability in how they metabolize caffeine. So it's something you've just got to check in with yourself. Don't drink too much alcohol before bed. That can make you feel like you're having a better sleep because you're kind of like zonked out, but you don't go into the more restorative patterns of sleep, so you don't actually get as rejuvenating a sleep. Screen time is really bad before bed, so try and like put your phone like in another room or somewhere away. All of those kind of photons going into your eyes are telling your brain to wake up as you're going to sleep. And again, this is a matter of degrees. Small changes in this can make a significant difference. Question?
Is there like a half-life for screen time as well? Like how long before bed should you stop?
We would say half hour.
Half an hour?
Half hour, yeah. Yeah, half hour. Sorry?
Watching a program that means nothing, like and so your brain's not really excited to know. Is it still bad just because?
Yeah, because it's actually that light going into your eyes is telling your brain to wake up, not whether you're paying attention to it or not. Most of TV, you're not paying that much attention to it. So yeah, it doesn't really matter. And I don't imagine too many of you guys would be napping for more than half an hour a day. No 2-hour naps. No more 2-hour naps. Yeah, if you do have a nap in the day, over half an hour stuffs your sleep cycles. Sleep, I think, is a good bang for buck habit change to make because sometimes it doesn't take too much to change the habit and you get a lot of benefit from it. How cool is this? Okay, so I'm searching through like iStock photos. I reckon this dude is this dude. Conspiracy theory? No? No? Okay. All right, regardless. Okay, some of the real do's is to create like a routine of your own that just helps you wind down for bed, not just be like racing home and then just try and go straight to sleep. If you feel like, say if you're going to bed at midnight and you think I should go to bed at 10:30 or something, if you think you should reduce go to bed earlier, a lot of research shows that it's better to reduce it by little bits every week, so 10 to 15 minutes a week rather than go, okay, I'm going to change it by an hour and a half. It just gets better results. And that's because you have these circadian rhythms, your sleep rhythms, and it actually helps them to change. So say if you were going to bed, you wanted to go to bed 45 minutes early, you could do that over 3 or 4 weeks. A really good way to do that is to set alarms to go to bed. And probably set them maybe half an hour before or so you can finish watching The Bachelor and do what you got to do and give yourself time to have that little relaxing routine. Obviously, the light is important, but I have people who say to me, Glenn, do you know how expensive blockout blinds are? I'm like, well, you've been seeing me for 10 sessions, so if we spend 3 sessions on your sleep, just get the blockout blinds. It's so important, and also getting a bit of natural light in the day because it's good for the light affects our sleep and weight cycles, and it's better for us to have a big wake cycle. So you're saying weight cycle, wake cycle. And that'll help you sleep better at night. It's important to get a bit of light in the day as well as the darkness. And temperature and humidity is really, really important. So there it's a matter of kind of get it like you like it. Same thing with the air conditioner. The air conditioner will save you money over your psychology sessions. With temperature, we can see either 1 degree, with temperature and humidity, we can see 1 degree of temperature or 10% humidity changes your sleep quality by 10%. So and it compounds. So if you're a degree too warm for you and 10% too humid for you, then you're going to have probably 20% less quality of sleep. So that's a real bang for buck one.
What do you do if your partner has a different
I want to put my hand down for that one. It's one thing you can do is there are doonas that you can get that have heating, cool, yes, split things.
She should wear more clothes to bed than wear this.
But if you decide that, don't tell her that. One thing I learned today is that I need to get better sleep, so you need to do this. It's hard to sleep well when you've just been punched in the face. And if you're a really bad sleeper, you're getting interrupted sleep, you're snoring a lot, you're waking up tired, seeing a GP, getting a sleep study, and some of those sleep devices are really, really useful. Obviously, a CPAP is one of the bigger ones, but there is some emerging research in the past probably 2 or 3 years for just modified dental devices that can really help.
I was going to ask, what is the latest you should do strenuous exercise before bed? Should you not do it close to when you go to sleep?
Totally. So exercise tends to be generally good for sleep, but is that another one? Exercise tends to be good for sleep, but you want to save 3 hours or so after doing really intense exercise. Also depends on your level of fitness, so it depends on your body. Why, what do you think it?
No, I'm just... It's the crowd, mate.
Yeah.
So going to the gym really controls at night.
It's probably not a good idea.
Not a good idea.
Yeah, you'd want to keep it, shouldn't matter too much if you do moderate exercise.
Okay.
So it's really only,
Run or something,
depends on depends on your level of fitness. But if you're really up in that like high intensity scale, then it's going to probably interrupt your sleep. Alcohol. So, some of the psychological effects of alcohol, depression, anxiety, stress, which is interesting because sometimes alcohol acutely relieves depression, anxiety, stress. It's also related to risk-taking, so drug use, sexual behaviour, driving too fast, but also, interestingly, it's related to development of personality disorders. So it can change your relationships with people that you work with and also with your friends and family. So that's important, and we actually find this, which I think is something really important, at subclinical levels. So even if you're not addicted to alcohol, you don't have alcohol dependence, we can see that too much alcohol can cause these effects, and of course it gives you sleep problems. So I suppose the big don't is the don't that most of us have, is that just we minimise the effect of alcohol. So we can actually find issues with sleep, mood, and cognitive function with having even a couple of glasses of wine a night, even if you don't notice yourself feeling like the intoxicated feelings. So I think this is something that's important to reflect on. If you do decide, hey, I'm drinking a little bit too much, if you feel like you don't have an alcohol dependence issue, you're just drinking a bit too much, a really good thing to do can be have a period free of alcohol, like a dry July, and that can help change your relationship with alcohol, just sort of teach you that you don't need it. And then if you do have an alcohol use issue, you can, if you want any further info on figuring out whether you do or you don't, you can just get in contact with me and I can direct you somewhere. Then the goal is really you don't drink, because that is it's almost like the opposite of food psychology. Food psychology, the best practice treatment is balance, but if you have an alcohol dependence issue, best practice is you learn how to not drink. Good news is there's tons of support for this. You can see a psychologist or a psychiatrist. There are some really good medications that can help you become free of alcohol, so you can see your GP. And I think that we sort of do sometimes, there is a perception out there that going to a rehab facility. There's a stigma around that. That's like just for, washed up rock stars. Or there's, going to Alcoholics Anonymous is for people who are blackout drunks on the street. And I don't work with any of these organisations, but over 10 years working with a lot of people who do have these issues, I suppose I myself have been very much surprised with how useful they can be and how great places they can be. So something maybe to think about. Okay, taking mini breaks is a really cool idea. The big don't is to cancel your mini breaks because you're too busy, which is what most people do. So look, I understand you guys are working in a high performing environment. So there'll be times when your mini breaks need to get canned. But if you do decide that taking a little break is a good idea, and this mini break's like 5-10 minutes a day, maybe once, twice, 3 times a day. I want you to really ask yourself whether that task needs to get done. So, if the boss is saying do this task, then that might be like, okay, that needs to get done. But to really actually ask yourself, what is the worst thing that will happen if I do actually take this little break? If you do decide to take a little break, schedule them in. Just put them in the diary or the calendar or however you manage your time so they become a task that you have to do or a task that you can do. If you don't know what to do for a mini break, practicing a little bit of relaxation is really, really good. But really it's anything that's not, actually we'll get into that in a second.
Hey Glenn, when you mean mini break, you mean like 20, 30 minutes, or are we talking about?
Nah, like 5, 10.
5, 10 minutes, yeah.
I mean, yeah, if you can get 20, 30, great. But yeah, like 5, 10 minutes, yeah. Who's done relaxation? No one? Not many of you? Oh, let's do some. Okay, so, all right. What I want you to do, if you've got like a pen, a paper, write down a number or on your phone, or write down your level of stress, just a really subjective, simple level of stress measure now. From 0 is like I'm asleep, 10 is get the crash card, and just give yourself a rough, measure of your current level of stress at the moment. Yeah, just right now. Yep. All right. Then just chuck your stuff aside. If you can, put your feet on the ground. Both feet. Kind of just chill back in your chair. You can sit up, you can lean back, doesn't matter really. I want you to just start by focusing. Someone yawning already, that's good. Just focus on your breathing, so just notice it going in and out. Don't have to even try and regulate it or make it deeper, just notice it. Going in, preferably through your nose, but doesn't have to be. Down into your lungs, back up out. Your mind will wander. It's totally normal. When it wanders, just let it wander back to your breathing. And then I want you to close your eyes. It's really cool. There are a million different ways to relax, but what we find in terms of brainwave patterns is just closing your eyes is one of the most effective ways to relax. And that might help you to focus on your breathing just a little bit. You don't have all that external stimulus to worry about. And your mind will naturally wander. That's normal. So don't judge that or feel like you're doing it wrong. That's your mind doing what it should do. But just gently guide it back to your breathing. And I want you to imagine that you're carrying some level of stress in your body, and that we're going to relax your body. So I want you to just focus on your head and your face and just let it relax with each breath. Just let it kind of sag. loosen, lengthen. Then just let your shoulders relax. Could imagine that you're breathing the tension out of them with each breath. Your upper arms, just let them loosen, lengthen, let go. Your forearms, your hands, your fingers. Just relax. Your chest, your shoulders. Just let them loosen, lengthen, relax. Let the relaxation move down through your trunk, through your hips, your thighs. Just kind of sink into the chair a little bit. And then your calves, your feet, just let them loosen, lengthen, relax. You might imagine that you're in a nice, relaxing place. So it could be anywhere you want. It could be somewhere real or somewhere that just exists in your mind. It could be somewhere that you've been before, somewhere completely new. With every breath, just allow it to become a little bit more real. See it vividly. Notice how you feel in this place. Notice even the temperature, the sounds that you notice. This is your relaxing place, and you can come to this place whenever you want to or you need to. I want you to think, if you want to take one of these mini breaks, you can always just resort to this resort in your mind. And I want you to just take a little look around the place, knowing that you can come back there whenever you want to, whenever you need to. And then slowly, in a time and in a way that's right for you, just come back into the room. Slowly just notice what's around you. Have a little stretch if you need to. Always good, guys. Always good after you do a bit of this relaxation to give yourself like a couple of minutes to just kind of... So guys, what was that like doing that? Actually, let's, while we're like, just as we finish, let's re-rate that level of stress and just see kind of what happened with it. If you want to put a little number on it, so you got a little measure. So what was that like? Hey? Someone said lovely.
As I was saying to Andy, it'd be quite strange, my babe, which is Andy's in, I was also come up to me and she's like, you okay?
It's not hypnosis. But we went through like really kind of a whole bunch of different relaxation routines then. We went through some breathing, went through just closing your eyes, went through imagining a relaxing place, and we call that progressive muscle relaxation, just sort of systematically going through your muscles. You could do some combination of any of these that you wanted, and that's what I like to do with my people, is just develop your own little routine. And it can be like a half an hour thing, or it can be literally like a 2 or 3 minute thing. Eventually, you'll be able to find that you can, because it is a skill, just like kicking a footy or riding a bike, you'll get better and better at it, so you'll be able to use it more effectively in more stressful situations more quickly.
Headspace app is great for that kind of thing. I mean, listening to what you were saying, I was like, yeah, I've heard this. It's the same thing, and it works fabulously.
Totally. And
you can't get to sleep or whatever doing
yep.
that.
Yep.
Very, very good.
And it is, and I think that's a really good point. Headspace app is a great thing to do, but also any relaxation, really anything that, that's the the question is, what is relaxation? It's just anything that relaxes you. So one of the biggest problems with relaxation is that you make it overly complicated. For 9 out of 10 people, if you lie or sit comfortably and close your eyes and focus on your breathing, you'll relax a lot. So it doesn't have to be. I remember doing sports psychology, and when I started doing sports psychology, I was in with my boss and this Olympic athlete, and he was taking us through his relaxation routine, because he was just switching from another sports psychologist to my boss at the time, and his relaxation routine was like, it was so weird and so lengthy, and it was like this whole 15-minute thing to get prepared, and we were kind of like, is that really even necessary? And we ended up deciding, no, it's actually completely unnecessary. It's really, really simple. The simpler the better. And it doesn't actually have to be any of that stuff. I've got a guy who runs a big transport company that I'm working with, and I told him the sharpening the axe story, and he says to me, he's a big Aussie bloke, he's like, Glenn, that sharpening the axe thing, that's bloody great. He's like, it's great, it stops me taking an axe to the staff. But he is a fiery dude, and and one of the things that we talk about relaxation, it's just too weird for him. So he's literally a grown man who, when he's had enough, he puts a sign on his door and sits there and looks at a $5 lava lamp that his son bought him. He's like, and that does the trick. So it's really, you got to take that circular definition. What is relaxation? It's just anything that relaxes me. So this could be an interesting thing to kind of talk with each other. And see if this actually could work in some way in your workplace, to whether we could make room for some of these breaks. And it's really, I think, important to have those discussions, because often there is this, conscious discussion that's going on, saying, yeah, okay, you can take that time, and an unconscious discussion going, no, you have work to do. If you feel like that, a really good thing to do is have a trial period. So, talk with your supervisor or your boss, say, look, if I think this is a good idea, can we trial this for 3 weeks? And if you hate it, then we'll stop. But if you think that I'm actually sending the emails better and I'm actually, completing the tasks better and I'm performing better, then we keep going and just run a trial and see what happens. I think, most of the time you'll find out that it works better. But if it doesn't, then there's no harm done. I do this with my individual clients, ask them to ask their bosses if they can do this, and very regularly, if they're brave enough to ask, the results are really, really good.
How often would you have them?
It's totally up to the person, but I would do at least 1 a day, up to 3 a day, and it doesn't have to be more than 5 minutes. Sometimes it's as simple as going outside. Going for a walk and just getting outside, having the smoke break without the smoke. It can be talking to people. The thing for it to preferably not be, based on workplace research in high-performing workplaces, is screen time. So if you're just checking your Facebook or you're surfing, checking the news, that we wouldn't class that as good a quality relaxation time. Okay, so for psychological well-being, really you just kind of do all the other do's, but it's kind of like we've been talking about, a mix of psychology and physical well-being, but we can't not just talk about your mental well-being. So it's kind of like I said before, psychology is for everyone. It used to be for people with serious mental health concerns, but now it's for everyone. So if you have a really serious mental health concern, or something that's bugging you, or you just want to do like performance enhancement, psychologists can be great. We say sometimes like psychologists are kind of like a mechanic. You know, you can take your car to a mechanic when it breaks down, or you can take your car just for its regular tune-up, or you can take your car for performance enhancement. And if you haven't seen a psychologist, hopefully, I'm sure Yvonne has already done this, but I've helped you understand that it can be a pretty normal kind of a process. You're not likely to get us sort of peering over our glasses asking, you know, starting a session about your paternal grandmother and then going for there for a couple of years. It's not what it used to be. Thank God for all of us. And these are a couple of really good sites. Over the last 5 years, these sites have got better and better. They're really good resources for you to understand about mental health. Okay, we will talk. How long have I got, Yvonne?
15.
Oh, easy. We'll talk a bit specifically about weight management because we do kind of live in this world that stigmatizes fatness and idealizes thinness. So all of us, or most of us, tend to have this unconscious desire to lose weight, whether we need to or not. Again, the thing is, don't diet. So it's really ironic. Don't do the thing that everyone does to lose weight. And it doesn't really matter what you call your diet, whether it's like a diet or a 6-week challenge or a 12-week program or a health kick or a detox or a medically supervised weight loss plan, or it's all the same thing. No carbs after 4. So, and I'm someone who's literally spent almost 15 years researching into dieting, and my clients still try and pull Swifties on me. They come in and go, Glenn, I know everything what you're saying, I totally get that. Now this is not a diet, but I'm not eating carbs after 4. We go, but really, so if you're focusing on weight when you're making food choices, you're doing a diet, doesn't matter what you call it. And your brain is too smart for you. It doesn't matter if you call it a different language, you're still doing a diet.
So just to start, there's a difference between eating healthy to maintain a weight goal, and if your aim is to eat in a way that maintains your weight at a particular level, or because you believe it's healthy, and you're not doing it for a 6-week period or a 12-week period, would you still consider that a diet?
I would, yeah,
so
because
you don't believe then that there are things you can eat or ways that you can eat that assist in reducing weight?
not in the long term.
Okay.
Massive, yeah.
Because everything that I've read and heard suggests that diet is a far better way to control your weight than exercise. Exercise is incredibly healthy for you, but it doesn't actually make you lose weight.
Absolutely. So exercise is incredibly helpful for you. Doesn't help you lose weight, but helps you maintain weight. Dieting helps you lose weight for the first 6 months to a year before you regain it all. Within 2 to 5 years, you tend to get a 10 to 15% increase. So if we get people who don't diet, say if you're, because some people are at a heavier weight than is healthy for them. And what we find is if those people learn to eat healthily without focusing on their weight, they tend to maintain their weight. So unfortunately, there is this thought, if I eat well, I will lose weight. But unfortunately, our bodies like to gain weight much more than they like to lose weight. So what most people who don't diet do is they maintain their weight, and their bodies get healthier. Even though their bodies don't change composition, their blood sugars get better, their diabetes, their blood pressure, those types of things. But people who focus on weight loss get much better results in the first 6 to 12 months. But then at that 2-year period and beyond, they actually get worse results. So it is interesting because there's a lot of, and you can look up lots of diets that will help you to lose weight, but none of those diets have yet been shown to result in long-term results.
So what about someone who would say, any of us could say, okay, I'm going to eat less processed food. I reckon I could do that forever. It's not something that's my body probably is. So I'm just going to eat more things that are just the thing they are, rather than,
Yep.
Would you call that a diet?
it all depends on the why. So if I'm learning new habits because it's healthy for me, or because it's going to make me feel better, or because it's a self-caring thing to do, then that's not a diet. So the same action, eating less processed food, that could be dieting or non-dieting, depending on your intention.
And I think that's the bit that everybody's like having trouble getting their head around yet.
Totally hard to wrap your head around. Totally hard to wrap your head around. But yeah, it really ends up becoming about your intention, not what you say you're doing, but the real intention behind what you're doing. So yeah, I sort of think about it like, using all of those skills like meal planning and impulse control and all that sort of stuff, like as tools that you can use for good or evil.
So if I don't like to go to bed feeling full and I say I don't eat carbs after 4, then it's not a diet, it's because I don't like to feel full of being bedtime.
Perfect. Exactly. I don't eat carbs for dinner. And it comes from the place of I've eaten carbs for dinner and noticed that it affects my sleep, and I don't like that. And so that is intuitive eating. If I'm doing it because carbs are bad, they're going to make me fat or not get thin or they're going to make me gain weight, then that's a diet. So it really becomes it's not so much what you're doing.
It's just semantics, isn't it? I mean, you're distinguishing between a healthy overall outcome and losing weight. I mean, if you recognise that being 10 kgs over what you consider to be your ideal weight is not healthy, and you're changing your patterns of diet to result in a healthier outcome, it's the same thing.
Not for 97% of people. So there are some people that do sneak through that, but I base my work on research evidence, which suggests that for most people that makes sense. The example I might give someone is, say if you had a particular cancer. That cancer is obviously not good for your body, but say you want to get rid of it. But say the treatment that's available is surgery, and the surgery has a 97% chance of not working and a 50% chance of making the person worse. Even though the person has that cancer, would you give them the surgery? So we get into a lot of research, and I'm talking to psychologists about this tomorrow, and we spend the first 6 hours on reviewing the research for this. But if you want to check it out, there is a ton of good research that I can send you on this, because it's a massive myth that people can lose and keep off a lot of weight with dieting. So similar with weight loss medications, there's not a lot of research to show that they help people lose weight in a long-term way. People lose about 10% weight and then they gain it back. And there is always a new medication coming up.
So just to go back to that diet, so you're saying that long-term weight loss is to do with how your brain thinks about making it healthier / food.
Sorry, can you ask that again?
Okay, so like you said, like the diet is when you think about losing weight,
yep,
using these methods. So
yep,
technically long-term weight loss would be a method where you're tricking your brain to almost not think about restricting itself but making it better. Is that?
Almost. You're almost there, because it really comes down to, and this is where we get a bit Zen-like, but it comes down to people who pay lip service to not being about the weight, and people who really let go of that weight goal get completely different outcomes. And the research does show, when I say diet, psychologists, we talk about this term restrained eating, and restrained eating is really a measure of how focused you are on your weight when you're making food choices. And it's not one or the other. There's over here there is unrestrained eaters, and then there are what we call flexible dieters or semi-restrained eaters, and then there are dieters or restrained eaters. So it becomes a sort of a continuum, but it is about your intention. What I encourage people to do is become body positive. So it doesn't mean we embrace fatness, but it means that we acknowledge that we are all different shapes and sizes. We're not all made to be poodles. Some of us are Labradors. And if you're a Labrador trying to be a little poodle, then you're always going to struggle. So you want to be the healthiest Labrador you want to be. And you can look up things like body positivity, health at every size, Has anyone seen that documentary Embrace? It's a documentary called Embrace, written by a lady from Sydney. Beautiful documentary on body positivity. This is a big movement that started probably about 15 years ago and is starting to gain a lot of traction. Learn intuitive eating and enjoyable physical activity. If you find that you are a lot bigger than you would like to be for health reasons and your doctor feels the same way, then it can be worthwhile exploring bariatric surgery as an option. That is the most evidence-based way to lose a significant amount of weight and keep it off. It is definitely not a silver bullet, and it still requires you to change a lot of your habits. It does come with some downsides as well. But if you're your weight is becoming very unhealthy, it can be something that's really good to explore. If you want any support with this, so it sounds like a few people are interested in this, you can kind of connect with the work that we do. And again, a lot of the work we do is, as we're seeing, is quite different. But we've been doing other work, weight-focused work, for 50 years, and people are just getting bigger and bigger. So it's worth exploring. You might not agree with everything that's in there, but it's worth sort of exposing yourself to some different ideas. I said it again, exposing yourself. I've got a free ebook that can help you with little mindset hacks for changing your eating movement and weight and body image habits. If you want to measure how restrained you are, how dieting you actually are in your thinking, you can do a questionnaire on our website. It's free. It's called the Psychological Profile for Weight Management. It measures your whole headspace when it comes to weight management. So how much emotional eating you do, what your relationship is with physical activity, your self-esteem and body image, how restrained or how intuitive you are with eating, just everything. So you can sort of see where you are. So if you're interested in managing your weight well for the long term, you can see what you want to improve. Yeah, I do a video series every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks I answer someone's question on the psychology of eating, exercise, weight and body image. For this discussion, if anyone's interested, the last Thursday, I call it Thursday therapy, the last Thursday therapy I did was on this question. Should I do bariatric surgery, or should I diet, or should I just accept myself as I am? So we're just answering all the questions that people generally have about this stuff, and then... That's me, yeah.
It's the guy from the picture. Sweet guy, right?
Hey?
A bit like the sweet guy.
A bit like I'll take that. I did this once for recently, a presentation for a bunch of doctors. And I showed them some of the different presentations I had, over the years. I was I present to psychologists, present to dietitians, present to public. And one of the guys was like, it's like a chronology of your hair. But for anyone who's interested, I do a lot over social media. I think it's really important for psychologists to be out there in the space of all the stuff that that people do for their eating, exercise, weight and body image, because that's what you're all exposed to. That's what you all see. And so if anyone wants to connect that way, that would be totally awesome. But really, I suppose the point of today is to not become the woodcutter who is too busy to rush to sharpen the axe. I really like this quote. It comes from, you can't really see it down there, it comes from a guy named Irvin Yalom, who is a brilliant psychologist who's practicing now into his 80s. He's written several books, so a highly effective, high-performing person. And he's very well known for taking great care of himself. One of the things he does that's quite interesting as psychologists, we often work to the 50-minute hour. So we see someone for 50 minutes and then we have 10 minutes in between. And in the last 20 years of his career, he's worked to a 50-minute hour and then had a 15-minute break in between. So you go to see him at 3:05 or 4:15 because he takes another 5 minutes out just for himself. So it's a mini break every hour. And I think he's a good example because he's a high-performing person in a professional job, has accomplished a lot, but still kind of has time to sharpen the axe. So So guys, I think that's tons and tons for me. Thank you so much. I've had a good time, and I hope that you've gotten something useful out of it. And like I said before, I think really habit change I wouldn't say it's hard, but it takes work. So let's acknowledge the reality of it. And if you can change one thing from today, that would be very cool. So thank you.